Imagine this, an empire that ruled over 3 continents for 600 years, brought to its knees not by war, not by rebellion, but by numbers written in ink. An official sits in Istanbul, staring at ledgers that no longer add up. The money is gone, the empire is broke. How does a civilization so vast, so feared, collapse because of debt? And could it happen again today? Because when you look closer, you realize this wasn't just an Ottoman story. It's the story of every empire that believed its power could outlast its spending. The names change, the flags change, but the trap remains the same. Once debt becomes the heartbeat of a nation, collapse is only a matter of time. It's the 19th century. The Ottoman Empire still stretches across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. But behind the glory and grandeur lies an invisible enemy: interest. This isn't a story about soldiers or battles. It's a story about finance, about how borrowing, spending, and misplaced confidence destroyed one of the world's longest-lasting empires. And the patterns you're about to see may look eerily familiar to the debt-driven world we live in now. Hey, I'm Mike, and welcome back to the channel. We explore the hidden financial truths behind the world's greatest rises and collapses. If you love history, power, and money, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because what you're about to learn might just change how you see the modern world. But before we dive in, ask yourself this: what if every empire, no matter how strong, is doomed the moment it starts borrowing from its future? The Ottomans didn't fall overnight. It began quietly, in golden rooms, through polished contracts and handshakes that felt harmless, until one day, the debt became the master and the empire became the servant. For centuries, the Ottoman Empire was financially independent. Taxes funded its armies, its palaces, and its administration. It was far from perfect, but it worked. That changed in 1854, during the Crimean War against Russia. The war was expensive, and the empire didn't have enough gold to fund it. For the first time, the Ottomans borrowed money from European banks, mainly British and French. It was meant to be temporary: borrow now, win the war, pay later. But the terms of the loan were brutal: high interest rates, short repayment deadlines, and heavy commissions. The empire received less than 2/3 of what it borrowed. The moment they signed, the clock started ticking. The war ended, but the debt stayed. And instead of paying it off, the empire took new loans to cover the old ones. Between 1858 and 1874, borrowing became routine, a way of life. Each time, Ottoman officials promised, "This will be the last loan." Each time, they were wrong. By 1875, just 20 years after the first foreign loan, the empire owed around £200 million, nearly 10 times its annual income. More than half of every tax dollar collected was being used just to pay interest, not even the debt itself. And here's the breaking point: the Ottoman government simply couldn't pay anymore. On October 6, 1875, they defaulted. The empire that had ruled for 6 centuries officially declared bankruptcy. Europe was furious. Investors lost millions. Panic rippled through London, Paris, and Vienna. But the real punishment came a few years later. In 1881, European powers forced the Ottomans to create something called the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, an organization run entirely by foreigners that took direct control of Ottoman taxes. They didn't just advise the empire, they collected the money themselves: salt, tobacco, alcohol, stamps, fishing rights, all taxed. But the revenue didn't go to Istanbul. It went straight to European bondholders. The empire had lost financial sovereignty. It was no longer just a debtor. It was a colony of its own creditors. The numbers were staggering. The Ottoman annual revenue in 1875 was about £21.7 million. Out of that, 12 million went to service foreign loans. Think about that. More than half the empire's total income was being shipped abroad every single year. Reports from the time described Ottoman bonds becoming worthless overnight. Local bankers refused to lend even at 25% interest. Corruption spread, record-keeping collapsed, and tax collectors took bribes to hide shortfalls. Foreign banks, especially the Rothschild and Oppenheim houses, gained enormous influence over Ottoman financial decisions. The empire's gold reserves, customs duties, and key industries were effectively under European control. Who was truly to blame? Some historians argue it was Ottoman corruption, poor accounting, overspending on the military, and extravagant palace projects. Others claim the empire was trapped by predatory lending. European bankers knew the Ottomans were desperate and took advantage. The truth likely lies in the middle. The empire borrowed recklessly, but the lenders wrote contracts designed for failure. It was a toxic relationship. One side greedy, the other desperate. While empires argued over ledgers, ordinary people paid the price. Taxes rose sharply. Peasants in Anatolia and the Balkans faced new levies on salt and tobacco. Local farmers sold their land just to keep up. Merchants and craftsmen, once protected by imperial monopolies, suddenly faced free trade with Europe. British and French goods flooded in, cheaper, faster, impossible to compete with. Ottoman factories closed. Workshops went silent. A whole generation of local artisans disappeared. For millions, the debt wasn't a number. It was hunger, poverty, and humiliation. The empire that once collected tribute from others now paid tribute itself. Debt isn't just a financial problem, it's a political weapon. When you owe someone enough money, they don't need to invade you. They already control you. And this story doesn't end in the 1800s. The same pattern echoes today. As of 2025, the United States owes over $37 trillion in national debt, about 119% of its GDP. Foreign creditors hold more than $8 trillion of that. America spends nearly $900 billion a year on its military, more than the next 9 countries combined, all funded through borrowing. Interest payments have exploded, nearly tripling in just a decade. By 2027, interest alone will cost more than national defense. Sound familiar? The Ottoman Empire followed the same path: massive spending, endless borrowing, and dependence on foreign creditors. Once the interest payments became unmanageable, sovereignty slipped away quietly. An empire borrowed to fund a war. It borrowed again to fund its peace, then borrowed once more just to stay alive. In the end, it wasn't defeated on the battlefield. It was conquered by compound interest, and the collapse had only begun. After defaulting, the empire didn't die overnight. It limped on, losing strength piece by piece. In 1878, the Treaty of San Stefano forced the Ottomans to recognize the independence of Romania, Serbia, and Bulgaria. Egypt, drowning in debt, sold its shares in the Suez Canal to Britain, giving London control of the empire's most strategic asset. By the early 1900s, the Ottomans were called the sick man of Europe. They entered World War I already financially broken, dependent on German loans to keep their armies supplied. And when the war ended in defeat, so did the empire, but the debts didn't die with it. The newly formed Republic of Turkey inherited those obligations and kept paying them off for decades. The final Ottoman debt payment was made in 1954, nearly a century after the original default. The children and grandchildren of people who never saw the empire still paid the price for its mistakes. Fall of the Ottoman Empire wasn't just a political collapse, it was a financial surrender. It showed the world that an empire can survive invasions, rebellions, even wars, but not endless debt. Debt builds empires, until it breaks them. And history has a strange way of repeating itself, especially when no one's paying attention to the numbers. If this story made you think differently about power and money, then share it with someone who still believes history doesn't repeat. It just rhymes. And if you'd like to explore how modern debt crises mirror those of the past, watch my next video, The Hidden History of Money and Control. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow and keeps these forgotten truths alive.